How do we sell coaching without being pushy? Whether you are a new coach wanting to gear up for those chemistry sessions that are in your future, where you'll have to show up and prove to someone that you are worth hiring, or whether you are going to look for joint venture partnerships, people that are actively placing ICF coaches, ACC, PCC, and MCC in leadership coaching, in executive coaching. At some stage in your journey, the chemistry session will show up, and I strongly suggest that you put yourself forward for chemistry sessions so that you can potentially find clients. Now, this would either happen by you putting yourself out there and marketing your services and then offering some kind of free introduction or lead magnet, or you've done a talk and there's a follow-up call where you chat to see whether there's a good fit, and then that call potentially secures you a long-term client, or you have been given an opportunity. Somebody's recognized your skills and your talent and your credentials, and the opportunity is that someone else, a JV, a joint venture partner, has clients. They have executive clients, or they represent a company, and they're suggesting that you show up to have chemistry sessions to look for a good fit. Of course, the ICF are also really big on promoting the idea of the initial chemistry session, because it's a way to be fully transparent, and it's a way for everybody to make sure that the coaching is going to work both ways for the client as well as for the coach. So I'm going to demonstrate an actual chemistry session conversation. I've put into this ChatGPT AI simulation demonstration everything that I have learned from having these kinds of conversations since I was in my early 20s. Now, that was before we even called it coaching. And I can tell you, it took me many years to get over the nerves. And once coaching became a phenomenon in the world, somewhere around 25 to 30 years ago, coaching chemistry sessions became a part of the deal, part of the journey. And I know they can be very intimidating, because I have felt the nerves before pitching for big clients. And all of the coaches that my team and I train, we have seen them also face the dreaded chemistry session or face those onboarding discovery calls with trepidation. What should you say? How should you say it? Do you need to be that pushy person that a lot of coaching marketing experts or gurus will tell you? Do you need to fake confidence when you're not feeling confident? I'm going to actually give you what I feel is a very natural, authentic, beautiful way to have chemistry sessions. You're going to lean into your actual coaching skills, and I've simplified this into a 3-step structure for you. And I'm going to demonstrate each piece, and then I'm going to stop the demonstration, give you a few tips, and I'm drawing from what I've seen work not only in my own journey, but also in the coaches that I've been fortunate enough to mentor, some for more than 20 years. The principles that I'm going to teach you, the structure, works in the informal life coaching chat conversation, and it works in the formal business, corporate, and executive coaching chemistry session environment. So grab that pen and paper, and let's go through the step-by-step so that when you leave this chemistry session, demonstration, and tutorial, that you will feel more confident and more equipped to put your hand up for discovery calls and chemistry sessions, and to make them a part of how you attract your ideal clients and secure them without feeling icky. just by being yourself and following the structure. Hello, Sam. It's wonderful to meet you. My name is Colleen-Joy, and thank you for the opportunity for us to have this conversation.
Hi, Colleen. Really nice to meet you too. I've got to ask before we dive in, no slides, no pitch deck. That's usually the opener.
Yes, I know many of my colleagues, and the typical coaching approach is to arrive to try to sell you a program off the shelf. But in my extensive many years of experience, I have found that it is far better to have a more relaxed conversation where I am going to be working hard to work out whether there is a potential fit between my services, my skill, my experience, and your specific needs. And then, of course, if we get to that point where we realize there is something here and that I could potentially be of service to yourself and your organization, then I'm very happy and comfortable to move into more formal presentations where I will customize something specifically for you today. How does that sound?
Honestly, that sounds like a nice change. I'm used to feeling like I'm being sold to right away, so I can appreciate this. Let's have that conversation and see where it goes.
So, Sam, one or two things just about me, and then I'm going to want to jump into perhaps just exploring exactly what you're looking for. I am an MCC ICF credentialed coach. Do you know about the ICF credentials?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the ICF levels. MCC is no small feat, so that's impressive. I'd be interested to hear how that plays into your approach, but I'm happy for you to ask away first.
Fantastic. I've also had experience with multiple corporate clients and have worked extensively with them. In fact, some of my clients I've had for more than 15 years. We've developed that kind of ongoing relationship. And I also bring to the table quite an extensive toolbox. But as I said, and as you've agreed, I think the best thing is for me to ask you a little bit about why you have started looking for a coach. So perhaps that's a good place to start. The big why question. Why are you seeking a coach on behalf of your organization?
Yeah, let's dive into that. We've got a lot of change happening with our leadership team, and we need someone who can help them grow, not just tick boxes. That's the real reason I'm here.
Sam, may I ask, when you say you want them to grow, what exactly do you mean by grow?
And talking about them stepping up beyond just managing, we want them to lead, inspire, and really develop their teams. So, growth in that sense.
To really step up. And so, yeah, I'm just sort of thinking about a number of tools that I have, and I'm just looking to match them with what you're talking about. So this change process, you're specifically focusing on your leadership team. How many people are we talking about for this potential coaching initiative?
Right now, we're looking at about 12 people. These are the key folks driving the big shifts we're going through. So that's where we'd want to focus.
And are you seeking coaching for all 12?
Not necessarily. We might start with a few of them first, see how it goes, and then expand if it makes sense.
That does make sense. And may I ask, have you had experience with bringing on board external coaches before?
Yeah, we have, though it's been a few years since the last time. So we've seen it work, but we're also aware it's all about the right fit.
Yeah, it's definitely about the right fit. So you've got a few people in mind out of that initial 12. And when it's worked in the past, what has worked?
What's worked is when the coach really partnered with us, didn't come in with a one-size-fits-all, and helped leaders reflect deeply on their impact.
So there's a partnership aspect to it, and then the reflection aspect, reflecting on specifically impact.
Exactly. Those two things have made the difference, and that's what we're hoping to find again.
And I'm assuming because you are aware of ICF credentials and you've had experience with coaches before, that the kind of coaching that you're looking for is more of that partnership where the coach is not really mentoring and teaching, which a lot of people think that coaching is about, but instead holding space, creating emotional safety, working on this growth context in the environment of change, and really drawing out solutions from the leaders themselves. Am I right to assume that?
Yeah, you're spot on. We're not looking for someone to just tell them what to do. It's that deeper space and trust where they can find their own way that you're after.
And the leaders that you are earmarking for this potential initiative, where are they in the hierarchy? Are we talking about middle managers? Are we talking about senior, C-suite?
They're sitting at the senior level, just below C suite. So we're talking about people with influence, but still growing into that top tier.
So I'm sure they are in some way role models for the other tiers of management in the organization. And so it's really key that they represent stepping up into this change, fully.
Exactly. You've got it. Their growth sets the tone for everyone else, so getting it right with them matters a lot.
Yeah, when I've worked with clients before that have had this top-down approach, I've seen it work really well. I think when people try to work on the sort of bottom up, working with more junior teams first and then hoping it will impact up, I find it less effective. But when you equip or when you empower your more senior leaders and give them that resilience and help them to help themselves really and to draw out their own best strategies and solutions, and then perhaps look at how to then take what's discovered there and implement going down the tiers. I've also found that to work.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for. If they can really embody that change, it naturally flows down. That's the kind of impact we're aiming for.
Sam, I know this is a strange question, but coaches are often brought in because there've been some challenges or there've been some concerns or some risks, and coaching is seen to be a positive, proactive way to mitigate that and certainly to implement change management strategies. May I ask, what are we trying to resolve here, or what risks are we trying to minimize?
Fair question. We're seeing some silos, some folks not really collaborating or stepping up during all this change. So the risk is that they stay stuck there, and we're trying to get ahead of that.
Okay, so we want to get ahead of the silos and this feeling of being stuck. And is this showing up as sort of a murmur right now, or is it showing up in any overt way?
Right now, it's more subtle. You can sense it in the way people hesitate or hold back, but we know that if we don't address it, it could become more obvious down the line.
Absolutely. You want to be proactive instead of reactive, I assume.
Exactly. That's the goal. Getting ahead of it so we're not scrambling later.
So Sam, just one or two more quick questions. The first is, if you had to imagine your ideal coaching initiative for these few people out of the senior leadership team, tell me a little bit more about what that actually looks like. Are we talking about a 6 month or a 12-month initiative? Are we looking at more one-off scenarios? What's your ideal coaching program initiative looking like?
I'd say somewhere around 6 months would be ideal. Enough time for them to really dig in, but not so long it feels endless. And definitely not just one offs. We'd want that continuity so they can keep building on the insights.
And that 6 month program, because you've had experience with coaches before, are you feeling like this is a hybrid online and in person, or purely online? And what does it look like for you in terms of frequency and duration? Are we talking about bi-monthly, monthly? Just curious.
I'm thinking a hybrid would be best. Some in-person touch points, but mostly online. Maybe every 2 to 3 weeks, so they've got time to apply what they're working on in between.
Yeah, I actually do agree with you. Hybrid is ideal. So it might be fantastic to be in person, especially to start this kind of initiative, and then to set up a whole lot of agreements and expectations, almost like a meet and greet, and then to move into the 2 to 3 week rhythm over that 6 month duration. And at the end, let's assume that it's gone really, really, really well. What do you want to see that proves to you that this program has been a fantastic success?
I'd want to see them breaking those silos, collaborating naturally, and leading with confidence. If they're inspiring their teams and driving the change instead of resisting it, that's how I'll know we got it right.
Okay, so there's the breaking of the silos as well as the removal of that resistance. And you're going to see that with actual collaboration. And yeah, that sounds like. So let's assume that that happened. Would there be some kind of formal way of closing off the program, some kind of celebration, perhaps something that wasn't just it's finished, thanks, just to reward your leaders for this journey that they've been on?
Yeah, I'd want to mark that. Maybe a formal closeout, some reflection on what they've accomplished, and definitely a celebration to acknowledge the effort. They should feel that success.
Okay. So I should think about that closing off celebration as part of the program. I think that sounds like the beginning of some great ideas.
Yeah, that would wrap it up nicely. It shows them the journey matters just as much as the results. Sounds like we're on the same page.
Yeah. Sam, a cheeky question, I know, but budget. Is there a budget for this? Are you going to have to find a budget? Or are we already in play and it's just a case of finding the right coach?
We've got a budget in place, so it's more about making sure we invested in the right person. The money's there, it's the fit that we're working out.
It's the fit. And what kind of timeline are we looking at, Sam? Is it something you want to kick off in the next month or so, or is it something you're earmarking for a later date?
We're looking at starting soon, ideally within the next month or two. We don't want to drag our feet on this, so that's the timeline in mind.
Right, so the coach needs to have capacity for these 2 to 3 week regular sessions, starting off with an in-person, possibly ending off with a celebration over that 6 month period. Now, just suppose I don't have capacity for all of the leaders in your particular team that you are wanting to start this initiative with. Are you open to me bringing in one or two of my colleagues for you to check out as a possible fit so that you have the reassurance that I've worked with them before and that we're all on the same page? And I might even take responsibility for briefing them and making sure that they're fully aligned. And of course, I would choose people that share the same toolboxes and the same level of skills, etc. How does that sound as a possibility?
Yeah, that sounds like a good option. If you trust them and you're involved, that works for me. It's about having that continuity, so I'd be open to meeting them.
Look, Sam, based on everything you've told me, I actually do think that. Sorry, repeat that.
No problem. I was just saying it sounds like you've got a pretty clear sense of what we're after, and I'm curious what you're thinking now.
Absolutely. Well, what I'm thinking is based on everything you've told me, I actually do think this is the kind of project that I would be interested in. There's a lot of clarity. We seem to absolutely be on the same page. I've run similar initiatives before, and I have also worked with executive clients and leadership clients like yourself in specifically the talent development space where there has been significant change. And what I've seen on the ground is, I think you're spot on, that resistance to change is pretty natural. And it's something that HR and talent development and folks like yourself that are more in the L&D space are endlessly tasked to actually solve. There's this change happening, and we want our leaders on board, and we want them to contribute positively to that change. So in amongst my toolboxes, not only in terms of ICF core competencies and ethics, and you know that world, and you know that all of that is taken care of because I am an ICF accredited coach at an MCC level. I've also not only completed ICF training more than 20 years ago, but have actually developed a number of tools that I bring into the coaching sessions. So, for example, one that comes to mind that proved very popular with one of my previous clients, that's still a client today. They're a logistics multinational, and that is the power formula. Shall I just give you a quick 5-minute overview of what the power formula looks like to see whether I've understood correctly what you're needing and that this could be a good solution?
Yeah, I'd be keen to hear that. If it's something that's worked for others in similar situations, a quick overview would be helpful to see if it lines up with what we're after.
Right. Thank you for that. So, power formula, which is unique to my coaching toolbox, I developed the tool, is power equals responsibility plus choice. So, we know that people are empowered when they not only are aware of the choices that they have in front of them, but the key is this one, responsibility. And we reframe responsibility as the ability to respond. And what happens is that when people are feeling powerless because they're facing change that they feel like I didn't get to choose, therefore I can't do something about this, we want to reframe their thinking in a partnership style, in an ICF aligned style. We want to open them to feeling like they are able to respond to the choices that still exist and that have now become a possibility and an opportunity because of the change. And so this formula, first of all, becomes a really good reflective thinking, brainstormed framework. But the actual tool is very simple. We sit with leaders and we go through a list of what choices they still have in amongst the change. And it's really holding space for them to have this epiphany or have this understanding, wow, I actually have a lot more choices than I thought that I did. And then we help them to come up with a sense of how competent they feel and how confident they feel to meet those choices, some of which will be new because of the change environment, choices that they will feel a little bit ill-equipped to meet, as well as others that they realize, wow, I can actually respond to this choice. So we measure, and it is an informal measure. It's not something that we do this in a very gentle, compassionate, and respectful way, but we create a bit of a measure. And a lot of coaching, I will say, Sam, you might have experienced this yourself. When it's pure ICF coaching, it can be a little bit, let's say, like luxurious conversations, which is beautiful, but we still want to create something here where your leaders are feeling like they've made traction so that they can hit that celebration point. And I find a tool like this, with flexibility, of course, becomes something really useful. And there are other tools that we can bring in as well. But now they've created this measure. They've looked for how confident and how competent they are to meet the choices that are showing up in this environment of change. And then we help them brainstorm. And this is where they truly are bringing their own ideas to the table, solutions to increase the competence, which is an outward measure, like they're thinking about what resources they need, what skills perhaps they need, and then the confidence, which is the EQ part of it. It's that stepping up that you really want from an emotional point of view, so that the resistance starts to fade away over time. So this is one tool that I think immediately comes to mind that may serve in this particular coaching initiative.
That does sound like a solid fit. I like that it's practical but still keeps them in the driver's seat. I can see how that would help them shift from feeling stuck to seeing possibilities.
Yeah, we actually, quite a few years ago, this particular power formula was used when we worked with over 75% of an international logistics company, and all the HR leaders and managers were actually taken through this power formula. It's really popular. So I'm seeing that as one amongst a number of tools that we can explore perhaps in the next conversation that we have.
Yeah, that sounds promising. I'd definitely be interested in going deeper on that if we move forward. It's clear you've got experience where it counts.
So Sam, I'm feeling like from my side, I'm willing to either create space for this initiative in my diary. I do have capacity myself to take on at least one or two executive clients. And as I mentioned, I also have colleagues and people that I can reach out to. So how is this sounding as a what's next and as a potential fit between myself and your needs?
I'd say it's a good fit so far. Next step could be for me to take this back, loop in the team, and then we can reconnect to line up more specifics. Sound good?
Absolutely. And thank you. And what would you need from me in order to loop in your team? Any documentations? I'm assuming my rates, etc.
Yeah, a summary of your approach, some info on rates, and maybe those case studies you mentioned would be helpful. That'll give us what we need to figure out next steps.
So 3 things then: summary of my approach, my rates, and a couple of those case studies. Would that be sufficient?
Yeah, that'll cover it. Once I've got those, we can move things along and see where we land.
Fantastic. And if I get those to you, let's say within the next 2 days, is that good enough time?
Yeah, that works for me. If you send them over in the next couple of days, we'll be set to reconnect after that.
Fantastic. And lastly, do you prefer that summary and the rates as like a PDF attachment, or do you want it all inside of an email? And what kind of length of document are you looking for?
PDF is fine, or in the email if that's easier for you. Lengthwise, just enough to give a clear picture. Doesn't have to be lengthy. Keep it straightforward and that'll be perfect.
Right, straightforward. I know we're all busy, so we don't want to be wading through tons of documentation. So, Sam, thank you for a wonderful conversation. Thank you for your time. I'll get that PDF off to you in the next 2 days. And would you like me to follow up in a week's time and check how it's gone with looping in the team?
Yeah, that sounds good. Give us a week and then let's touch base. Thanks again. Looking to seeing what you send over.
Appreciate it. Chat to you in a week's time. Thanks, Sam.
Looking forward to it. Thanks again, Colleen. Talk soon.
Cheers. So, step 1 in my structure for you to consider and to take on board, whether you're informally chatting to someone or whether you are formally presenting, pitching in that initial conversation, and that is credibility. So, you do want to establish your credibility. Now, how we do this is that we don't give someone a whole resume. It's so important to do what I teach called create a frame. So you want to imagine that between you and any potential client is a wall, and that wall is trust. I don't know what you can do. I don't know if you can solve my problems. Therefore, I don't trust you, right? So we want to turn that wall into a frame, like a window frame, like a door frame, which means that now the person is open. And that means curating 2 or 3 bullet point size facts about the past, not the promise. Something that proves that you are the real thing. So establishing your credibility also includes, I believe, not trying to be pushy and not trying to sell. And in fact, a credibility factor is our willingness to customize. And yes, did you hear? There's some alliteration happening. So we confidently customize. We don't confidently push ourselves onto a client and say, here's my thing, please buy it. Here's my program, here's my coaching. And so this first little piece of credibility building these days turns out it creates trust to show up with confidence, but without being pushy. And the confidence is, I'm here to be ethical and authentic, to figure out if I can help and how I can help. And if that turns out to be true, we'll carry on having our conversation. If not, we'll shake hands, no strings, no pressure, and walk away. Or, as I mentioned in this case study example, is I've often referred to other people if it didn't look like it was a good fit. Once you've established some credibility and you've mentioned that you can customize, and this is assuming you can, because you've got the right, shall we do it, certification. And shall we add one more? Competencies. I was going to say skills, and I thought, no, hang on, we can alliterate this. So if you've got the right certification, so that's a credibility factor. And in the example I gave you, in the executive space, certainly most clients are looking for at least ACC or PCC ICF credentials. And then, of course, we need the competencies. So we need to have real skills. And sure, it's not enough. Certification and competencies isn't enough to win clients. You need to know how to have chemistry conversations, and you need to know how to put yourself out there, etc., which other videos of mine are focused on. So today we're focusing on the chemistry session. So what do you do next? You've established credibility. Well, you coach. I know it's not quite full coaching, of course. We're not doing a proper coaching session, but did you hear? We ask coaching questions. Now we do sneak in a few spiral down questions, what I call spiral down. So we ask about potentially what hasn't worked, if it hasn't worked before. But in this example, the client has had a good experience of coaching, and therefore we can lean into what did work so that we can continue to do what worked. So coaching questions that we ask, why? We want to ask why. Why do they want this? What has made it interesting for them? Why have they showed up for this conversation? And that why is gold, right? The why is gold. We also want to know what. What have they previously done? What has worked? What hasn't worked? And how? How do they see this rolling out? How do they see the solution coming to fruition? How do they see it beginning and end, etc.? This is, you heard, I hope, in this example, with this information, we custom build something for the client in front of us. And I cannot tell you how many times my coaches that I've trained, my team and I have worked with for many years, this approach has a hit rate, let's say, of like 9 8, 9 out of 10 times it works, compared to the arrive with something to sell, here, buy my program, where we try to push something onto the client. And I don't know why I'm thinking of that little toy when I was a kid. There was like a little ball that had little shapes as holes on them, like little triangles and squares and circles and stars. And the trick when you're little is to take the right shape and put it into the little holes. And when it's the right shape, you get the satisfying feeling of it just falls through. But if you're trying to literally put a square peg into a round hole, it's very impossible. When we don't first establish our credibility, second just coach, use our backtracking, use our silence, use our warmth, use all those good coaching skills to learn about our clients so that we can customize something, you really are just forcing something that isn't going to work. We also want to know when. We want to know when they are thinking of starting. We want to know what budget they may or may not have. Now, if you are having a chemistry session with an individual client, so this example was more B2B, but the same principles apply for B2C, which is an individual. I actually can think right off the top of my head of a number of our graduates that I've worked with. One that's coming to mind, she was struggling to find coaching clients. We had a conversation. She's one of my wisdom partners, which means that I get to mentor her long term. And she thought she must do everything that she's told to do, build websites. She was even thinking of developing an app at some point. And she'd also picked a niche, relationship coaching, which was very narrow and really, really difficult to get into. And I suggested a different approach because she'd been trying for perhaps nearly a year and struggling. And I said to her, just go and have conversations with human beings. At the time, she was a very young mom. She had 2 young little boys. So she was very active, dropping kids off at school every day, active in that community of moms with young children. So I said, you don't show up to sell anything. You don't show up to push. You establish your credibility, as in she's qualified as a certified coach and she's got a couple of toolboxes. She mentions it casually and she becomes interested in what are the challenges they are currently experiencing in their relationship with their kids, in their relationship at home, in their family environment. And she started doing this. She started chatting to them. How are they trying to solve this? What hasn't worked? What has worked? How urgent is this problem? Now, obviously, it's not a formal session, so she can't say, so why have you considered coaching, right? She's just chatting. The next time I spoke to her, she said, Cole, what must I do next? I said, why? What happened with the conversations? And she said, oh, she's got 3 people that want to sign up and she doesn't have a program or she doesn't know what to do. And I said to you, sign them. You start small. You custom build something for each of them. You start small. You go in low risk, low entry, and you deliver. And you put in 10 times more effort than you expect, because that's going to be how you learn. And then after you run your first 3, let's say, sessions or programs, you will learn, if you carry on being obsessed with finding out what people really need and custom building for them. Well, fast forward all these years, she now has international clients and her program is quite a bit more polished. She doesn't have any social media marketing. She doesn't have any websites. It's all been word of mouth, because of doing exactly what I'm telling you to do. And then, can you guess what number 3 will be? Case studies. Now, I know you might be thinking, but Cole, if I'm just starting my coaching, I don't have case studies. Right, I understand that. But the tools that you've learned, and hopefully the ICF competencies that you have learned, they carry weight. So what you do is you lean into the credibility and the case studies you can find from the training provider that you've studied with, and from the ICF if you're on an ICF path. So you go and look at the research that the ICF, for example, have done about the benefits of coaching and the return on investment, and you lean into anything that proves your toolbox, anything that proves the credibility of the kind of coaching that you are bringing to the table. And you do that until you have your own awesome case studies to bring. And of course, we're never exaggerating. We're always telling the truth. But the best way to prove you can help is to help. So when you then demonstrate a little tool, like I did in this example, and you actually show them a little bit of how they can benefit, and then you link it to a case study, that is probably one of the most powerful ways to get somebody genuinely interested. Now, you can only do that when you have accumulated this, but it's worth accumulating. It's worth going out there and, without breaking confidence, accumulating the kinds of anecdotal stories that prove to people, wow, this is real, and it's had real world applications. Now, what you'll see is that all I needed to do at that point is say, how does that sound? And you want to present by sharing and solving instead of selling. So another alliteration moment, yep. If you focus on sharing, if you focus on solving their problems, you will never need to sell. In the typical way, you'll never need to push. Now, if the client had wanted to know about my rates and had wanted to get into the logistics, we could have absolutely done that. And I also suggest, especially for programs, that you have examples of rate structures depending on what you're delivering. But what is better, in fact, even for B2C, as in one-on-one clients, is to not get into that kind of detail straight away, but to actually say to your client, which I did in this example, and you could do it in an informal life coaching chat with an individual, you could say, I'm going to go away and I'm going to take everything you've told me and I'm going to put something together specifically for you. I'm going to come up with 2 or 3 options around pricing and logistics, and then I'm going to send it to you. Or even better, in my example, she needed to send me to send it. That can happen. But if it's possible, you rather present that at the next meeting to the person. You just say, this is what I've come up with. And you show the person option A, B, and C. And it is good to have 3 options, by the way. So it shows you flexible. And then if they are a bit nervous or they don't have a full budget, they can choose option A, and the option B should be slightly bigger, and option 3 should be all the bells and whistles. The one that you're ideally hoping to have them say yes to is usually B. That's kind of the sweet spot. That's where you're aiming. And A is the low risk, really small piece of cake before they buy the whole cake, right? So you pitch, or you give them 3 possibilities, and 9 out of 10 times, maybe 8 out of 10 at the most, I found this to be an extremely effective way to have chemistry sessions, to have normal human conversations with potential clients that turn into long-term, beautiful clients. And I really sincerely hope that this works for you as well. If this content was helpful and served you, have a look at this other video that I created that is focused specifically on building your business as a professional coach.